Hello and welcome to In Defense of a Movie podcast. And on this episode, we are diving into 2006's The Wicker Man. Joining me, as always, is Aaron.
I want to say a special hello to all my Wicker Men and Wicker ladies out there. Sorry. Wicker me, Wicker you.
So, The Wicker Man is sitting on Rotten Tomatoes at a blistering 15%. The audience score is 17%. And one thing I wanted to mention right off the top that I noticed, which I thought was interesting, is this movie has upwards of 50,000 user ratings to make up that 17%. So upwards of 50,000 people have felt the urge to go on Rotten Tomatoes and add their 2 cents to this. So
it's every single person in the UK voting against this movie because they love the original.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning, Aaron, we both watched not only the 2006 version, but we also both watched the 1973 original for context.
Mm-hmm. Watch is a strong word. I'd say we entered into some sort of hazy fever dream. Some poor music, just terrible fever dream that just you wanted it to be over right away.
I felt like I was on mushrooms in Scotland.
Yeah.
I said, thank you very much for showing us the film, Michael. Son, he said, what did you think of it? And I said, well, I think it's damn good. And my agent said, I think it's a tremendous film. And Michael Dealey said, I think it's one of the 10 worst films I've ever seen.
The Wicker Man from 2006 was directed by Neil LaBute, and it stars, of course, Nicolas Cage. So, Aaron, it's kind of funny. This is the first Nicolas Cage movie we've done on the podcast.
Which is a surprise.
I was thinking about this, before we get into like the cast and the plot and everything, the more I got into this movie and tried to do research on it, I was kind of a little bit annoyed by the online discourse surrounding this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like for every YouTube channel about bad movies and every podcast about bad movies, virtually everybody has done a Wicker Man episode.
Yeah.
And it kind of seems like an easy target, but at the same time, there's a lot here that's really interesting, and the backstory to it is even more interesting. So, I don't know if you found the same thing, but trying to find information about this movie buried underneath miles and miles and miles of people just crapping on this film was actually pretty hard.
Yeah, no, I found that as well, that it was hard to dig up some information on this. Dad, are you a Nicolas Cage fan, though?
I am
can he do no wrong by you?
I was doing a movie called Next, and on the movie I had this idea that I'd love to play like an ancient sorcerer in a movie.
No. I mean, he's definitely done some stinkers and some low budget stuff, but I think, and this is just my take, I think Nicolas Cage is in fact a good actor.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, I agree. I think there's the normal level of that, most actors are on, where they're kind of like sane and, want to take like a realistic approach to like acting. And then there's Nicolas Cage, which is just like 400% all the time, giving it his all. And sometimes it lands and sometimes it doesn't land.
3 words that have been used a lot, over the top. I prefer to call it outside the box.
Okay.
I like to push the envelope of film acting. I don't want to get stuck in a style like naturalism.
For me in this movie, I honestly liked him. While I guess he was a little bit unintentionally funny, but I don't think that was his fault. I think that this movie had a very strange tone to it.
I agree.
Like, it didn't feel, for what this movie is, it didn't feel like it had the appropriate tone that like a horror thriller, kind of like culty movie should have.
Yeah, I agree. The thing I think I'll say about Nicolas Cage is in the last 2 months, I've seen a movie called Dream Scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a movie called Renfield. I've seen a movie called Longlegs. And now I've seen The Wicker Man.
Yeah.
And in every one of those movies, Nicolas Cage is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
In Dream Scenario, he plays this kind of pathetic teacher that everybody's inexplicably having dreams about. In Renfield, he plays Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
In Longlegs, he plays like a glam rock Satan-worshipping serial killer.
Yeah.
And in The Wicker Man, he plays a cop with severe PTSD.
Yeah.
And every one of these roles is entirely different, totally different flavor, totally different performance. And just having that backdrop going into this movie, I don't think anyone, it's the problem is it's so easy to meme on him. It's so easy to have like that hot take of how ridiculous he is. But at the same time, he does some really cool stuff.
The work speaks for itself, But I do think that things evolve and come into focus, and sometimes you can play with things that, or stereotypes that people may have. Like, there is a mischievous mind at work on The Wicker Man,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I finally kind of said, yeah, I might have known that movie was meant to be absurd, But saying that now after the fact is okay, but to say it before the fact is not, because like you gotta let the movie have its own life, You have to let the audience have its own connection and bash it or not bash it or love it or whatever they want to do with it. That's up to the audience.
Every time I'm going into a Nicolas Cage movie, I kind of just think to myself, which Nicolas Cage are we going to get today? And it's kind of, and then, you just you have that in the back of your mind, and then you sit back and you take it all in.
Totally. One of the interviews I came across with Nicolas Cage regarding this movie is he described his performance as operatic.
Okay.
Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance was the last movie I did where I went operatic.
The only thing standing between you and the rider is me. He's scraping at the door! Scraping at the door!
To me, the words over the top mean you're out of control. Right. See, I always feel I'm in control while portraying out of control. It's by design.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah!
Everything came together in that one scene.
Operatic. That's interesting.
Yeah. So apparently in his mind anyway, when he goes all big and bombastic and starts yelling at people and making crazy eyes like in Ghost Rider or Face Off or this movie, it's almost like stagecraft where you're making the big face, you're making the big voice so the people in the back row can catch your intention better. Whether or not this is a good thing he does is entirely subjective.
Yeah.
But I did think it was interesting that it was a choice by him. Like, he's not unaware that he's doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I actually do want to defend his character in this movie, and I have a few reasons why. But yeah, this is not the podcast where we crap all over this film. There's plenty out there. We're gonna try our best to find stuff worth liking here.
Yeah. You know what, I'd argue that there is how I would describe this movie to a slightly better Midsummer.
yeah, totally. I was gonna mention that too, because I have a list of all these random things this movie reminded me of.
Yeah.
And not just movies too, but like concepts. Like, it reminded me of Midsummer. It reminded me of all this weird Bohemian Grove stuff, if you've heard anything about that. It reminded me a bit of the whole Epstein Island thing.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Burning Man Festival and all this weird occult ritual stuff I'm sure we'll get into. Like, whoa, it's a trip. You got to be ready for this movie.
Edward, I know that we haven't spoken in a few years. I need your help. I have a daughter. Her name is Rowan. She has been missing for 2 weeks now. I fear she is in danger, so now I turn to you. Be careful and believe nothing that you see or hear.
So, Aaron, what is The Wicker Man about? What's going on here?
It's about a guy who loves wicker baskets. No. How to start this movie? Yeah, we kind of already touched on it. Basically, Nicolas Cage's character gets a letter from another lady who lives on this island, saying that her daughter has gone missing, and he is a police officer, so she's asking for his help. So he travels to the island to obviously investigate the missing girl, and while he's on the island, he learns that, well, first of all, something's not right. Like no one's telling him the truth. Everyone's a little bit shady and a little bit weird. And then eventually the lady who wrote him a letter said that the daughter is actually his. And he goes even more insane trying to find her, and then eventually finds her and finds out that it has been one big ploy to get him to the island because they want to sacrifice him in order for their crops. I think it's their beehives, actually, in this one. They want their bees to produce more honey because that is their main source of income on their island. That's pretty much it, in a nutshell.
They don't have cell service, but they have a website. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but
yeah. So many times during this movie, I was like, okay, I honestly didn't think he was gonna die at the end. I thought they were gonna like harvest his semen and like breed with him. Definitely did not go that way. So I kind of liked the way that it ended.
It was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Did you see this in theaters when it came out?
I did not.
Okay.
I'm not I'll say around that time in my life when this movie first came out, I was not too much into like horror films or culty like films or anything like that. So I tend to stay away from these kinds, but had it come out, like in the last few years, I would have seen it.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters. I think I might have went with my dad at the time.
Oh, really?
But I didn't. I just remembered kind of the meme moments about it.
Yeah.
And I sort of just forgot about it and logged it away until I thought it would make a good episode because I was seeing so much. When I was thinking about different bad movies, quote unquote, out there, this one kept coming up, and I thought it's not that bad, is it? And then watching it, I was kind of like, this is kind of a little bit slow and dull.
Yeah.
And then you get to that third act, and that's where things kind of really go off the rails.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? I like I said, I liked it. When he's dressed up as that bear, just like knocking people out, loved it.
Yeah,
I was very happy to be in it. It's a remarkable film. I mean, it's a cult film, still all over the world. They're talking about remaking it in America with Nicolas Cage. No, that's what Universal says. They're going to remake the movie, but I don't know what they're going to do. And somebody said they'd seen on the internet that they wanted me in the film. I thought, well, what do I play? Because if this is an American story, and he's an American, obviously, and everybody else is American, well, I could play Americans. But what would I do in the story? I could play Lord Summerall, obviously. So I don't know what's going to happen.
So I found out that, obviously this movie's based on the 1973 version.
Yeah.
I guess Nicolas Cage was friends with Johnny Ramone.
Why did you choose to do The Wicker Man?
It was a personal reason to begin with. My friend, a punk rocker, Johnny Ramone, who's no longer with us, was a huge fan of horror films. And I would go to his house, and we would watch his favorite movies, and he had a list of ones that I had never seen. And he mentioned The Wicker Man, and I was aware of it because I'd seen the poster for it when I was a boy, but mysteriously the movie never really came out, or I didn't have access to it. And I watched the film with Johnny, and I was profoundly affected, especially by the end of the movie. And so I thought to myself, well, wouldn't it be interesting to kind of bring this back? Not too many people I know are aware of it.
It was actually the film's dedicated to him at the end, it's kind of a funny dedication because it just seems so, you would not think that this is like the movie that Johnny Ramone would want. And so it's very disorienting when you see his name come up at the end.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what happened here?
Even the first one, because when I heard that story, or read that story, I was like, did he really like this movie? After I watched the original, and then I was just like, I guess to each their own.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to compare and contrast the two. I never would have watched the original, I don't think, if I hadn't watched the 2006 version first.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that's one of the things Nicolas Cage said in production is, hopefully that people will watch this and then they'll go back and watch the original.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the goal, like it worked, but it doesn't really stand too well on its own.
Yeah.
The original movie was filmed in Scotland, and this one was filmed in BC. The opening shot, it was so funny, Aaron, because I was like, man, that looks like the Okanagan. That doesn't look like California. And it was filmed like right outside of Merritt in BC.
Crazy.
Afternoon.
Sorry about the...
It's okay. I'll get it. Give me your hand!
So I was looking up what the original 1973 Wicker Man was rated, and it has a Rotten Tomato scores of 91% and an IMDb score of 7.5. So this movie, like, people were fans of the original. Now, me, obviously, not being born in 1973 or not, not of that era, me rewatching it, I was like, this movie is terrible. It has weird music. Like you and I were joking before, it sounded like someone just wrote a terrible album and then made a movie to go along with it. And so I'm like genuinely surprised that the original Wicker Man, like people loved it so much. And so when I watched the Nicolas Cage one, I legitimately thought it was head over heels way better than the original one. I thought they also did like a little bit of a better job of kind of like fleshing things out. The original Wicker Man was obviously very like the guy Howie was very religious. He's like quoting scripture all the time and stuff.
Totally.
I would say they're probably both about the same level of like weirdness in their own ways. Got a lot of weird nudity in the original, but then we got just over the top acting in Nicolas Cage's, which, you know what? I'm gonna go for the weird nudity. No, I'm joking. Nicolas Cage's acting definitely did add to it for me.
I think with this movie, this is one that people either know very well, intimately, and are in fact a kind of cult fans of, or they have no idea what the movie is. And those people who do know it, they come in with very pointed feelings about how they feel about the original and even the idea of somebody remaking it. So I think you walk in with that burden on your shoulders.
The thing that I want to argue for this movie is that the soundtrack wasn't that good. Like I feel when you watch a movie like this, like movies like Midsommar and just any general horror movie like Longlegs, they did such a good job with the soundtrack that goes along to it. Like, and horror movies are known for this just like really eerie sounding, kind of like nails on the chalkboard, like make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I felt like that movie didn't have any of this. And that's where I say that the tone of the movie was all wrong. Like they didn't have the right tone. If someone was to take this movie and I'd say recut it, maybe take a little bit of the dialogue out and make it a little bit more like disjointed, but just with this eerie, weird soundtrack to it, it would be terrifying.
I'll find her.
If she existed, we would know of her.
Whose desk is this,
Rowan?
I agree. Lose the awful music and maybe lose the bicycle while you're at it because no one looks cool riding away on a bicycle angry.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I loved too was how mad that he would get at people and be like, I'm gonna arrest you and bring the full force of the law down on you. And then all the villagers were just like, oh, that's nice. Like, did not perceive him to be a threat whatsoever.
Yeah, doesn't arrest anybody as far as I remember.
No,
not a
bunch
single
of
person.
empty threats.
Yeah. before we get into kind of comparing and contrasting the two, I really want to zoom in on Nicolas Cage's character because the bulk of the criticisms about this movie land on his shoulders. And it's funny because he doesn't seem to care what people think of this or any of the other movies he does. He's from the interviews I saw and the clips of him talking about this in his film catalog, generally speaking, he kind of feels like so long as people cling on to the movie, that's the important part. But it doesn't really matter to him why they cling on to it. So whether they enjoy making fun of it or they enjoy singing its praises, it's all the same to him. And the thing I didn't really see discussed about his character a lot is the opening scene, he witnesses a girl and her presumably mother or guardian get obliterated by a semi-truck, and then they blow up, and he ends up heavily medicated, presumably on some sort of antipsychotic, because he's having visions of them and he's having bad dreams about them for the entire movie, right? If you remember, in the opening shot of the film, he's at this diner and like everyone's ordering burgers and stuff, and he orders a salad and he's looking at the self-help tapes on this little spinner rack. So he strikes me as at the very start of the film, he's kind of smiley. You know, he picks up the teddy bear. He's very soft and very like, I don't know how to explain it. He just seems like a very like nice guy, very almost like a bit naive to the world around him. Which I think is a nod to the first movie in terms of, what was the guy's name in the first movie again?
Howie.
Howie is a virgin in the first film, and that's mentioned a few times. The idea is that the sacrifice has to have this innocence to him. And what's interesting is Nicolas Cage's character gets put through the ringer. Has really bad PTSD, and then he gets this letter from his estranged fiance, and then he gets to the island. The island's really weird. Nobody's giving him a straight answer. And then he finds out, all the while taking like antipsychotics and having these episodes, all the while he finds out that this missing girl, Rowan, is in fact a daughter that he didn't know that he had. And yet people are criticizing Nicolas Cage's character for flying off the handles. And like yelling at people and having these outrageous episodes. And I just thought that was really interesting because I kind of want to defend his character because like when he's yelling like how did it get burned? How did it get burned? That is his character genuinely being like at the end of his rope about nobody giving him a straight answer. He saw a little girl presumably get burned to death in the back of a car, you know, and then they mysteriously vanished. They never recovered the body. So he's left with this mystery of like, what the hell happened?
Let me dump some bees on your face and see how you react to that.
I know. It's the problem is that the movie isn't rising to meet him. He's at an appropriate level for his character and his characterization. And what I mean by that is exactly those bees, because like he's reacting to being stung by bees, but we're seeing terrible CGI bees. We're not experiencing the same level of intensity that Nicolas Cage is giving us because of the production value around it. I don't know. I don't quite understand it because he is appropriately freaking out, Aaron, by all accounts. How do you feel about that?
I would agree. I think this kind of ties back to what I was saying just about the edit of this movie and how I was also saying that, you know, how no one took him serious, right? So it just seemed like everybody kind of had their heads in the cloud and then he was like the only serious person there. And I mean, to be fair, he was getting duped in being there, but I would have liked to see, you know, maybe a little bit more, less like dopiness and maybe a little bit more of like actual, like mystery or whatever.
How are you able to make a creepy, scary movie that takes place mainly in the daytime?
When one is on a kind of police procedural, it makes it, you don't go knocking on doors in the middle of the night. You go to people's homes when you think they're there and awake and all of that. There's more of a sense of unsettling creepiness that comes into this movie. It's the same sort of thing that you look at how Kubrick did in The Shining. He spends most of the time in a hotel that's rather well lit and big rooms. There's, sometimes the scariest things are what you can see, not what's hiding behind a door.
When he first arrives on the island and he runs into the people and they're holding that like burlap sack with what we assume is a body in it. And they're just kind of like, they just look like village simpletons rather than like menacing people.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so what I would have liked to see is, just a little bit more of like an eerie kind of like weird people. And then like you said, matching Nicolas Cage's level.
I agree, because he's operating just like at an 11 or a 12 for most of the movie. And it's tough because his character is pretty unlikable. He's kind of an asshole to everybody for the most part. As much as he's slowly losing his patience and coming unraveled, he's also not being respectful, and he keeps throwing around his presumed like authority as a police officer. And I think anytime you have to tell anybody, like, pull rank on them, probably means that you're not exactly that powerful to begin with. So but watching him slowly come unraveled to the point where he's like punching and kicking people when he's trying to save his presumed daughter from burning to death after watching another girl presumably burn to death in a car, and his career's in jeopardy. He's on antipsychotics. He's on some strange island. And the other thing too, they actually, when he gets to the island, he mentions the next morning about how someone's been through his luggage and his self-help tapes are actually missing.
Okay.
For whatever reason, they stole his self-help tapes. And it's the same self-help tapes that he actually purchases at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, okay.
So you get the sense that he's already in a pretty bad headspace because he had his fiance like run off and virtually disappear when he thought they were going to get married. So like he's already, his headspace before even the opening of the movie, he's already on like, he's struggling to keep it together, right? So I really didn't have a problem with his freakouts. I really, like, I understand the memes and I think they're funny, but at the same time, I think that if you really dig into his character, kind of makes sense.
Oh, definitely.
That being said, though, he kind of is a terrible detective, hey?
In what way? Because, like, he kind of had like every time he tried to find something out, he would run into a roadblock, right?
Yeah, I kind of found this movie disorienting a bit because I kind of thought that the girl at the start of the movie that had disappeared was his daughter, and that was kind of like a red herring. And I wasn't sure if that was ever going to come back around.
I actually wanted to ask you about that because I wasn't too sure about that as well. Because the way that they had it in the movie is like there was obviously an older lady and the girl in the back there that get hit. But then whenever they do the police investigation, they say that they never found anyone in the car. Yeah. So it's like, and then obviously he keeps having visions of that same girl throughout the entire movie. Like, I just didn't understand what the visions were. Like, were they a part of it? Were they just saying that he's actually crazy and hallucinating? That part for me was a little bit hard to kind of tell, like, what they were trying to do. What did you think of it?
Well, I think this movie asks way too much of its audience because I feel like it would have been maybe a good idea to have a scene before he got to the island where he went and visited like a doctor or a psychologist to further develop his unhinged nature and maybe talk about a diagnosis or whatever he was experiencing. Because these are the questions we have. Like, we're not really sure. I kept thinking about that opening sequence because presumably the inhabitants of Summer's Isle orchestrated that whole opening thing. But that would mean that whoever was driving the semi-truck also was in on it and had to perfectly hit this car in such a way that not only didn't kill the two women in the car, but that also ended up somehow with Nicolas Cage still knocked out so that they could get away. Like, the amount of things that had to happen there just seemed really... It was just asking too much of the audience to suspend your disbelief about all of that.
Maybe, you know what they should have done? It should have been like a a curse that the people on the island did, some kind of like voodoo magic. You could explain anything with voodoo magic.
Yeah, I agree. There could have been just any sort of throwaway reason for it.
Yeah.
So one of the things I kind of wanted to get into is the difference between this and the 1973 version. One of the things that really stuck out to me about this version is that he doesn't really talk to any of the men on the island, like really at all.
Yeah.
He doesn't even really get up in their face and get too threatening with them, but for some reason he does with all the women.
Yeah.
Of course, in the original, the power dynamic and everything about the island is different. There's no, in the 1973 version, there's no bees. Their main thing is apples and stuff like that, fruits and vegetables. In the new one, it's bees and honey and other things, I'm sure. But the other thing I wanted to defend about this film was, even though they updated it from what was, I guess, a beloved version, even though they changed the dynamic of the island and updated the story, in doing that, they also did update the occultic references to still make sense and to still be based in folklore. I was going to ask you what you thought of all like the beehive imagery and the hexagon, or the what are they? Yeah, the hexagons everywhere, and I guess the imagery that they were trying to do in this movie.
To be honest, I was not. I like a lot of the imagery probably went over my head for the most part. I did think, though, that, I did like the idea that they did, a women's cult, and it was kind of like the men were just, I don't know, almost like cattle stock on their island.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about, a cult ran by all women, but just kind of makes it extra a little bit weird for me. Maybe I've seen too many of the cults ran by men. I'm tired of seeing cults run by men. I want to see more cults run by women, so I personally was a fan of that. Yeah. What did you think?
I liked it, but I found it really tame, and especially after watching the original, because watching this in 2024, there's so many other mediums and shows that have, again, like you said, done cult stuff, and to much better effect and with more intense results. And this kind of felt a bit quaint, that's all it is. They're just doing a fertility ritual or something, or a birth and death ritual thing, and the thing that kind of creeped me out is in researching this movie, I found out that the concept of the actual Wicker Man itself is based in a real thing. There's old drawings of this thing, in all these interesting Celtic and Nordic rituals. These are real things that happen.
Yeah. Tell us more about? Do you know more about the history of the Wicker Man?
There's this funny interview that I listened to with Christopher Lee, where the director first told him the title of the film when he was pitching the project to him, and he said, "Yeah, I'm doing this movie that I'm going to call The Wicker Man." And Christopher Lee, because, and I don't know how many people know this, but Christopher Lee is he was rather a pretty creepy dude. He was involved in a lot of occultic stuff, and he was very well versed in this stuff.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what cults he was in, but he said to the director, as soon as the director said, "I'm making a Wicker Man movie," Christopher Lee immediately said, "Oh, well, that's going to be about, sounds like it's about Celtic sacrifices." And the director actually got annoyed with him because the whole premise of the film was people not knowing what the Wicker Man was.
Yeah.
But because Christopher Lee was from the cult world, he was he knew exactly what it meant right away. Yeah. So the big twist in the film was not a twist to him.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I was oh, that's clear. Oh, cool. So you're gonna do this, right? So,
Dan, did you know what Wicker Man was before this movie?
No, I didn't.
Neither did I.
I myself grew up in technically what is now labeled a cult, my family. Yeah. So a lot of this, and it had nothing to do with Wicker Man. It was just it was pretty timid, but it was still technically it's referred to now as a cult. So this kind of stuff always feels a little bit creepy to me, especially harvest cults and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's based in real stuff. It's based in history is riddled with evidence of ritualistic sacrifices for harvests and rainfalls and fertility and war. I think the scariest thing about this movie is that it could literally be happening right now.
I actually have a Wicker Man in my backyard. It's about 1 foot high and made out of branches. Actually, this is a little bit of a weird story, but I'll tell it anyways. So my cat Carla, she lives outside. She lives in my garage, and every once in a while she brings me a mouse. And I always call that an offering that she's bringing. And every time that there is a mouse, rather than throw it in my compost bin, I burn it. So I would sacrifice mice that my cat brings me.
You suspect foul play. Wicker Man returns.
Who's the Wicker Man?
We're gonna search every inch of this town.
She'll burn to death. She burned to death.
I need your help.
Daddy.
You're like a deity to your cats.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's hilarious. And in return, you feed them and you water them and you pet them and lick them. And
my cat cult is going strong.
Aaron, what was there anything specifically that you wanted to defend about the 2006 movie?
Just Nicolas Cage in general. I think he is a beauty of a human being. And that no matter what movie he's in, whether it's good or bad, we should just take an appreciation to who he is as an actor. And you know, he's gone on record multiple times saying that this is his job. His job is to act. So he's going to be in as many movies as possible, whether they are good or bad, because he's doing his job. So I really like that. I like that about him. I like that he's willing to take chances on things that no one else is willing to take chances on. Also, he never plays it safe. He does what he thinks is the best approach to playing a character. And he just gives it his all to what he thinks is right. So you can't argue with that. So that's definitely how I would say I'd like to defend this movie, is just, you know, Nicolas Cage doing Nicolas Cage things.
I've had a lot of people ask me, why do I work as much as I do? And the reason is I like to be active. I am an actor with the underline of act. I want to act. I want to be active in my life and the things I want to help out with, and I want to be active in my work. I'm into creating. I feel I've only got so much time in this physicality, and I want to take advantage of it as much as I can and be productive.
He's probably one of the hardest working people in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I don't even know how many. He must put out a half dozen movies a year. It's incredible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This weird, eccentric guy that just shows up, does the work. And I've never heard a bad thing about him, really, in terms of people that have worked with him or anything like that. So, you know, I'm sure he's a little bit weird. But, you know,
who of us aren't a little bit weird?
I know. And his output is incredible. So,
yeah.
Let's see here. So one of the other things I wanted to defend was actually the costume design and the masks and the general set dressing of everything. I thought was actually really good. Especially when Nicolas Cage starts poking around the place and starts seeing sort of the underbelly of everything, where there's there's candles lit in the daytime and weird stuff everywhere and jars of things. I just thought that's when the movie was at its strongest, when we started to really get under the surface of what was really going on around the island. I would have liked more of that. And I also thought the imagery in the background, there's cultic imagery everywhere. There's symbolism to lots of random things. There's different poems on walls. There's like I said, like honeycomb imagery and all, like the doors, windows, all sorts of stuff. And it's too bad that it goes so under the radar, but I feel like the set designers and the prop masters and everybody that really made this place feel actually lived in did an exceptional job.
Yeah.
There was the point where he's going door to door and he opens the door and there's a lady covered in bees. Then he goes to another door and there's a guy in bed with bee stings, and it just looked kind of horrible. It reminded me, Aaron. It reminded me of that scene in Wild Wild West when Artemis is going from door to door and he opens the one door and he's just like, "Oh, that's a new one," and there's like a goat in there. So.
I really like what you said about just the set design and everything there, because I had the same sort of thought. Like the costume design is there, the set design is there, the like whole creepy atmosphere of this place where they all live is there, but it's just literally the way, like the soundtrack and the way that the movie was cut together for me, that I think takes that like element of spookiness out of it.
Yeah, daytime horror movies are always tough to pull off. And if you don't get the atmosphere, like in the original, the atmosphere is it's a slow burn, but everything's very creepy and just like a degree left of reality.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you don't pull that off, it just doesn't work. Yeah. Now, the version you watched of The Wicker Man, did it have the James Franco ending?
Which is the James Franco ending?
So at the very end of the film, you have the two girls. It basically fast forward, and the two girls are out at the bar, and they pick up James Franco and one of his friends, and the implication is basically that they're gonna breed with them.
I believe so. I think so, but I did not realize that was James Franco. That's hilarious.
I got disoriented because the version I watched didn't have the "not the bees" line, and it didn't show his legs getting broken, and it was kind of done with an ADR cutaway.
Okay.
And I was really disoriented. I thought it was one of those Mandela effect moments. I was like, I could have sworn that he yells "not the bees." And so I brought it up on YouTube, and I realized that there actually is two different endings of this version, or of this movie.
I got the version with the bees and his legs getting smashed.
Okay.
That's hilarious. We both watched a separate version of this.
Yeah, I didn't realize that there was a separate version.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I definitely recommend the "not the bees" leg smash version.
Yeah, well, now I'm going to have to go back and look that up.
I can see why it got re-edited because of the digital bees, and maybe Nicolas Cage just went a bit too far there. But
can you go that far though with getting bees dumped on your face?
Dumped like liquid. Yeah. I mean, his knees are smashed. He's realized that he's about to die. Everything's gone to heck. I don't know. I still come back to defending his performance because anybody in that situation would be completely unhinged. And this isn't really a hot take, but I think sometimes people, if they don't like a character, they just think that it's bad acting. Yeah. But it's possible to just not like a character, but it's still to be a great performance. And I think that's sometimes a sticky point with people where it's like, look, this is a really unlikable protagonist, but it doesn't mean that Nicolas Cage isn't acting, because he's definitely acting. So I don't know.
Dan, do you have a WTF moment for this movie?
I don't think I do, because the problem with this movie is it's been so memed to death, and there's there's so many podcasts and videos about dunking on this film. So I honestly don't think I do. I think anything that I would think is a WTF moment has already been well documented.
Yeah, that's fair.
How about you?
This isn't really a WTF moment, but I did like that one scene where I think he's like sitting on a bench and he's having a dream, and he's dreaming about that girl or whatever, and then he wakes up and she's like dead in his lap, and then he like wakes up again after, because it was like a dream within a dream, and so I just liked his genuine response, like after he wakes up the second time, because he's like, like not again kind of reaction. And it was kind of the same reaction that I had, like, I got like fooled into, it was a dream, and then being like, another dream. And then, so that was that I thought that was a pretty funny moment, and I really enjoyed it.
So you're on record that you like this version better than the original, right?
Yeah, I will say it. I will 100% say that this was a far better version than the original.
I liked the original because I liked watching Christopher Lee act like he was in a cult just a bit too well. I thought it was really haunting and creepy. I think I like the new one for reasons. Like I like both for different reasons, but the first one, the original one, definitely felt like a chore to get through, whereas this one was genuinely entertaining for the most part.
Yeah.
And I don't agree that it's an unintentional comedy. I honestly don't think it's funny per se. Is there some bad acting? Yeah. Is there some bad pacing? Yeah. Is there some bad music? Yeah. But again, there's a lot to like at the same time, I think. So Aaron, would you recommend the 2006 Wicker Man? What would you say?
I would give it 6 Bs out of 11 Wicker Men.
I agree with that. I agree. I would give it 6 apples out of 11 beehives.
Okay. Oh, wow. So bold of you, Dan.
Oh, I know. Well, that's 2006, The Wicker Man. This was definitely a challenge, this one. There's not a lot of meat on this bone, Aaron.
Yeah. Yeah, there was not a whole lot, and a little bit difficult researching this film as well.
I agree. But yeah, it's worth a watch. It's interesting. It can be funny. It can be serious. The occultic imagery, if you're into that kind of weirdness, and there's a lot of neat historical attention to detail that go. And there's literally video essays about the occultic imagery of the Wicker Man on YouTube that you can watch that are fascinating and bizarre and definitely creepy. So check this out. Check out the 1973 version if you're feeling really sick one day and you're on medication and you just feel like tripping out for a while. Throw that on.
Yeah, if you feel like going into a fever dream.
Yeah.
Throw on either of these movies.
You know what you should do is do a split screen and play them both at the same time. While you're on like COVID or something.
Are you trying to kill our listeners? That may cause a stroke.
They know what they signed up for. All right, guys. Well, that's it for The Wicker Man. A little bit of a shorter episode, but I hope you guys had fun. And yeah, we will see you in the next episode of In Defense of a Movie Podcast.
Bye.